Hello everyone. Before we proceed on, I would like to thank Astronomer for sponsoring our today's video. So if you're diving into the world of data, Astronomer's product Astro makes it super easy to orchestrate workflows and manage complex data systems more efficiently at enterprise level. So whether you're a data engineer or someone who's more passionate about data, so you should definitely check out Astro's and its features to see like how they can help in transforming your organization's data journey more efficiently. So I would also provide the link in the descriptions so you can explore around Astronomer and its products on your own. Thank you. Hello everyone. I welcome you all to today's learning session with Big Data Show. In our today's learning session, so we are going to discuss about orchestration. Orchestration is actually a process of like automating different tasks together to accomplish a goal, right? So basically, like we are planning to create a playlist for orchestration. So within this playlist, we will try to like explain briefly about the basic fundamentals around the orchestrations and what are all the tools which has been like widely used in industries and how it can be more beneficial for a data engineer. And also like we will try to like cover a lot of complex problem and complex use cases around orchestration tools, which you can expect in our future videos in the orchestration playlist. Before wasting time, let's get started. Okay. So first, we will just try to understand orchestrations from a formal definition, so which I actually got from internet. Actually, orchestration is the coordination of multiple computer systems, applications, and services to automate and streamline complex workflows. It involves managing and integrating various tasks across systems to achieve a unified process. Maybe like some of you might have understood or some might have not understood it. Let me try to get a clear picture around like what exactly is orchestration, right? So in our primary school education, so everyone would have learned about computer science. So that's when like we might have like came across this flow charts, right? So these flow charts like have like a different set of tasks, and based on the different set of tasks, so we try to like take a decision to accomplish a particular process. Let's see the flow chart. So basically this flow chart starts with the first task, which is start. And after that, it requests an input. And based on the input, so if it is a positive value or if it is a, no, sorry, it's not like it's not about positive or negative. It's about like odd or even. So if it is an even number, it follows this particular path. And if it is odd number, it follows this path. And basically it assigns the value of A, and then the value of A gets printed and you accomplish the task, right? So here we are actually creating a workflow. This workflow has multiple tasks, and each of the workflow has a task dependency to it, right? So if you see here, the workflow starts from the start, and it takes the input, and it processes the conditions, and based on that, so we are deciding the flow and printing, and we are ending the process. So let's imagine, so if I do not have a dependency between the input A and the conditions, if I'm not getting the value of A, so is it okay to like run my condition to check whether it is an even or odd number, right? It's not feasible because I do not even have a value for my A variable, right? So this is how like a flowchart will be looking like, and this is how like the dependencies are being built. So orchestration is very similar to what actually I have shown you here. So as a data engineer, so let me speak about like how it is more useful for a data engineer. So for a data engineer, orchestration involves managing and automating data workflows and pipelines to ensure data processing and integration. So actually, as a data engineer, so you will not only work with a single pipeline or just a single source. So basically, your data might be residing in different source systems, and also it might require different set of like transformations and also like a different set of process which could be involved to perform your data pipeline, right? So to orchestrate all these things, you might need an orchestration tool. So let me try to give you an illustration in um, with a diagram. Okay. So let's imagine that you have a source over here. And as a data engineer, let's imagine you want to extract the data from the source and you want to like place it in a staging layer. And then you have to probably like perform a transformation. And you also have to like store it in a, let's say like data warehouse or a data lake, right? So let me put the flow. So first we extract the data from the source, and then I just store it on my staging layer. Once after I have the data on my staging layer, I would probably perform the transformation. So let me just take this box to write down the transformation just for the purpose of differentiation. Transformation. And after my transformation is completed, let me just try to write it to a data warehouse or a data lake. Okay. So here, if you see, like for performing each set of tasks in this workflow, you might need different set of applications and uh, different set of tasks to be working in series or parallel to accomplish your end goal, which is to make the data available in your data warehouse, right? Let's imagine that you're performing extraction over here, extraction. So probably let's imagine that you're performing an extraction from the source using a Python application. So basically, like let's imagine the source is a relational database where you have created a Python applications which going to make a connection to your source and extract the data and store it in a staging layer. So which can probably be a S3 bucket or something else like. And after, in this stage, you're performing extraction and write operation, right? Because I'm actually extracting the data from the source and I'm writing the data into my staging layer. So in my staging layer, I have my data, and later on, I have to like read the data from the staging, which I again like do like a read and transform. And then and write to data warehouse, right? So this can have like different set of tasks, and this task has to be like orchestrated in a way like where you can set dependencies over each task. Let's imagine, so this task is scheduled to run on like 8 p.m. every day. So today I'm trying to like extract the data from the source, and once my extractions and write operations been completed on the staging layer, I probably can perform this read and transform and write operations. So let's imagine a scenario where I was not able to like perform this extraction, which is actually the initial task of my workflow, right? So what happens is like if I'm not able to extract and write the data into my staging layer, I won't be having any data for today. And if I do not have a data, so there is no purpose of like initiating the task to read and transform and write operation, right? So this might like is kind of like a an unnecessary job, right? It's not at all needed. So when I do not have the data available in my staging layer, there is no purpose in like initiating the task for read, transform, and writing, right? So how do you manage it basically? So let's imagine you are writing a two different set of applications. So one is to perform the job between source and the staging, and the other applications probably is going to perform the operations between the staging and the data warehouse. So how do you set the dependencies? So you have to probably set the dependencies as like once I receive the data on the staging layer, only then you have to like um, run the task for read, transform, and write. So how do you do that? So if you think that probably like there can be some different set of scenarios which can come onto your mind, like let's imagine so we have this event notifications so which can help you to like trigger the other set of operations. So whenever I have the data available in the staging layer or something else like, but that only works like whenever you get the new incoming data. So let's imagine that whenever you're performing a transformation and if this transformation is failing. So if your transformation is failing, you don't not just like want to like skip this process, rather you also want to like send the alert to your team stating that this particular process has been failed. So what do you do that? So you probably like need to like create another application which can basically like identify like if there is any like fault in your applications, and based on that it can send alerts to your decide team. Alerts, so when I meant by alerts, it can be an email alert or like any sort of like message on Slack. So this can help to help the developer team to know what that there is some problem within the operations, and like they can look onto this and try to like fix the issues, right? So it can be so definitely there can be like multiple ways of like setting up the dependencies between different jobs, and you can like try to like create a workflow. But actually it's quite difficult for you to like manage it separately on each of the applications and to set the dependencies between each applications. It can be really a tedious task when you're trying to like work with multiple tasks in a workflow. So here we are just working with a very like a minimal number of tasks. So let's imagine that you're working on a workflow which requires like a orchestrating task which numbers from like 50 to 60 tasks. So in that case, it's going to be like very difficult. So that's when the use of like orchestration tools comes into picture. So orchestration tools can help you to like manage, automate data workflows and the pipelines to ensure like a efficient data processing and integration. So let's discuss about the typical use case scenarios for an orchestration tool in a data engineer daily routine. So the first point is actually the data pipeline management. It's about like orchestrating the end-to-end data pipeline from extracting and transforming and load to ensure smooth data flowing and processing. Yes, of course, just as a case what we have discussed. So here we are basically performing an ETL transformation. So which means like we are extracting the data from the source and performing the transformations and loading it in our target, right? So to orchestrate the complete process, we can like utilize orchestration tool to perform all this operations. So that's what they mean by. To give you a better example, maybe like I can just think of like getting used something. Orchestration ETL pipeline. Yeah, perfect. So if you see here, so here they are trying to orchestrate a workflow where they're actually extracting the data from the Twitter API, and they are performing some sort of transformations using the Python application or something as like. And once they perform the transformations, they are loading it to their target, which is actually a Postgres table. So this is how basically a very simpler ETL pipeline task would look like, right? And let's move on to the second use case. It's about task scheduling. So automating the scheduling and execution of your data processing tasks, such as batch jobs or real-time data ingestions to ensure timely data availability. Okay, so what do you mean by task scheduling? Imagine a scenario that, as we have spoken here, like your team, let's imagine like you work for an e-commerce platform. So where your business teams wants you to send reports about the sales, which you basically got from the source data, right? So they want the accumulated result of each day's sales at the end of the day. Let's imagine they want you to like they want the email by at the end of the day. Let's say like 12. Okay, let's imagine they want a mail which can help them to identify like the sales report of a previous day. So this report has to be sent on 6 a.m. So how do you actually orchestrate, schedule this job? So to schedule this job, so there is a concept called like cron scheduling, and certain like very popular orchestration tools like Airflow, and there are also like yeah, where you can like schedule your task using some UI interface in Azure Data Factory and all those things. So basically, like you will create a workflow, and within the workflow, you'll have like multiple tasks with their dependencies being set, and basically you can trigger the job. This can be triggered on a daily basis. It's kind of like an alarm which can like sense on which time like you basically have scheduled the alarm to trigger, and based on the time it's going to trigger your workflow, right? So let's imagine on daily 6 a.m. your business team is expecting you to send a email alert about this yesterday's sales. So on the 6 a.m. so you will probably trigger your pipeline, so where your data would be extracted from your source, and then like it resides on your staging layer, and then it performs the transformations, and then it loads onto the data warehouse or data lake. And then once you get the data from your data lake, right, let's create a new task which actually is going to send an alert. So let's imagine it's not about alert, it's about the report as an email. Imagine that you are writing a Python module which would read the yesterday's records from your data warehouse, and you probably like create a HTML file which can like simultaneously send reports as email to your business users, right? This can happen on a scheduled basis, on a daily fashion, right? This is what we call we mean by like the task scheduling. And the other thing is dependency management. So handling dependencies between different tasks and process ensures that the tasks are being executed in correct order, and that prerequisite tasks are completed before the dependent task begin. So here in the flowchart, as I have mentioned, so here we are basically creating a flowchart with this different set of dependencies. So basically your workflow starts with your start, and then it gets the input, and only then it can perform the comparison conditions, right? If without getting your input, it can never perform the comparison conditions. So let's imagine like you do not have an output for your comparison conditions. Let's imagine like the value of A, which has been like provided on this particular space, is a null value or something else like. So if you're dealing with a null value, so probably like it's not going to give you an integer value. So then it's going to like give you an error, so which can like stop your pipeline, right? So this is how you basically set your dependency. So let's imagine a scenario which we can think of from a data engineering perspective, right? Okay. Here we actually spoke about a single data source. Let's imagine that you want to extract the data from two different data sources. Let's imagine that you have this sales report stored in your relational database where you have your customer information data, which is stored in a NoSQL database. So as a so you understood that to create a email report, you actually need the data from your sales report as well as your customer data. So to do that, you basically have to extract the data from two different sources. It's going to be source one, which is your customer's data, and you have your source two, which is your the source one is basically the sales data, and source two is actually your customer data. Imagine you are working with two different sources. In that case, you're extracting the data from two different sources, and you're putting the data into your staging layer. Within the staging layer, you probably will have the data of your sales and the customer record. And then let's imagine a transformations. So this transformations involve a join operations. A join operation between sales and customer record, customer data. Imagine a scenario. So as we have mentioned that you might have probably written a Python module to extract the data from your source. Okay. So to perform the join operation, you know that only if you have the data from two different sources, you can perform the transformations. Imagine that that your particular task, getting the data from source one, is succeeded. But unfortunately, there is some problem in extracting the data from your source two. So let's imagine there's a problem in extracting the data from your NoSQL database because of the connectivity issues or any sort of problems. In that case, you are given the data of only the sales data, whereas there is a problem in getting the information from the customer's data. In that case, when someone tries to perform the transformation job, which is basically here, it's of no use, right? Because only if you have your data of your sales and customers, only then the transformations can happen. So that's what they meant by setting up the dependencies, which means handling different dependencies between different tasks and process, ensuring tasks are executed in correct order, and the prerequisite task. So as we mentioned, for the transformations task to perform the join operations, the prerequisite is to have the data from two different sources which are made available in your staging layer. So if any one of the process fails, you do not satisfy your prerequisite for your transformations task. So that's when orchestration tools comes into picture to help you with the dependency management. And let's talk about the other thing, which is error handling and recovery, right? So error handling in the sense, so let's imagine a scenario that you have created a new workflow as what we are seeing here to perform to extract the data from different sources, storing it into staging, transformations, storing into data lake, data warehouse, and then reporting, right? So let's imagine a case where your extraction from your customer data has failed, right? So you, as a data engineer, you know that your workflow is being orchestrated using any sort of orchestration tools. Then you're not probably like looking at your production systems to see if there is anything went wrong. So if something goes wrong, there should be an automated way to help you alert and monitor things which is failing, right? So what basically the orchestration tools helps you to do is, it also helps you to monitor the um, result of your task, the outcome of your task. So let's imagine the outcome of your task is being failed, which means the status, when your status is failed. So your sole responsibility of this workflow is to send an alert to the developer team. Send alert to developer team. So let's imagine that in your orchestration tool, you have like created a flow to send an email alert to your developer team whenever a task fails. So what happens? A developer will get an alert, and then he gets to the production or any sort of environment where he can just try to see the logs of this task to understand like what went wrong and what went right. And based on that, he can fix the issues on the production, and then he can rerun this particular task, right? So this is how like the orchestration tools helps in task monitoring, error handling, and recovery, and monitoring and alerts. I think I have confused the point. So in the monitoring and alerts, it's help you to like monitor the health of your data workflows, where it can like monitor the status of your each of the tasks, and it can also send you the alerts, right? So error handling and recovery. So this is actually something more different from monitoring and alerts, right? So let's imagine error handling and recovery. So let's imagine a scenario so here we are basically trying to extract the data from a NoSQL database, right? So when you are trying to like extract the data from a database, it's actually there might be a problem of a connectivity issues. So at one point of time, maybe you might have failed to connect to your particular system. So maybe if you have retried it on one other instance, it could have worked. But how do you automate this task? So this is where your orchestration tools comes into picture. So let's imagine that you have designed your workflow, and you have like instructed your orchestration tool that, hey, let's imagine if any of the task fails. If the task fails, you should probably have to try one or two times. So let's imagine if this particular task fails. So I am asking it to retry the same logic 3 times, right? If it fails even after 3 times, then send me alerts or perform any recovery operations, right? This is how like you can just instruct your orchestration tool to manage the errors within the task, and you can even handle for your recovery. So I hope this is clear for you. And yes, so we have almost like discussed about all the 5 points, which are all the typical use case scenarios of an orchestration tool in a data engineer's daily routine, right? So let's speak about like top data orchestration tools out there in market. And we will conclude the first video of this playlist. And in the upcoming playlist, so probably like we will speak a lot about any particular orchestration tools. Ideally, it's around the Apache Airflow. And then like we will try to solve a lot of beginner level to complex workflows, right? So here are all the top data orchestration tools which are out there in market. So the first one is Apache Airflow. So Apache Airflow is actually an open source tool. So like which has been like created to perform this orchestrations, which has been like widely used by data engineers in almost every different sectors and industries. And here we have this AWS managed workflow for Apache. So actually, like Apache Airflow is a open source edition, whereas this managed workflow for Apache Airflow is kind of an enterprise edition, which has been provided by AWS. So there is a difference between a open source and enterprise edition, which we'll see in the upcoming slides. And Astronomer is also one of enterprise edition of Apache Airflow. And we also have tools like AWS step functions, which can also help you to orchestrate different set of Lambda functions and all those things. And also like within Azure, so we have this data factory. So I never worked much on it, but I have heard good words about this tool, so which can also help you to orchestrate different services within your Azure cloud platform. So in our previous slide, so we have discussed about having Apache Airflow as an open source, and also like a enterprise edition, which is like a managed workflow for Apache Airflow. Managed workflow for Apache Airflow, which is provided by AWS, and Astronomer, which is also an enterprise edition of Apache Airflow. And let me just put it down here. Yes. So why do people or developers opt for enterprise editions? So developers and organizations often opt for enterprise edition of Airflow or its commercial alternatives due to several features and benefits that are not available on the open source versions. So few of the considerations are advanced features. So let's imagine, so basically like there has been like a lot of open source contributors around the world who has helped to like build this Apache Airflow. So probably that could be like a different set of features, but there can be like certain set of features which are like very needed for certain set of organizations, which probably this enterprise editions might have like found out, and they have added the additional functionalities to the existing open source versions, and they have like licensed it, right? So this can be like one of the considerations to take off. And support and maintenance. So when you're just going ahead with this open source versions, so if there is any problem with the versions, release versions which you are probably using, definitely you're not going to get any support. So maybe probably like you will have like open discussions within the Git or any sort of like places, but the response time is not like what to say, like there is no like SLA time being set to like help you with the support and the maintenance of in case of any problems with your release versions. So using a open source version in your enterprise or organizations for your production environment is definitely a not a recommended thing. So that is one of the considerations why people also always opt for the enterprise editions. And security and compliance. So when you're working with a big organizations, actually like they have like certain set of security and compliance for their infrastructure management and the data management. So definitely like there can be like certain places where the open source versions can lack in providing the necessary securities and compliance, which the enterprise editions can provide you to manage more better and be more compliant with the rules and regulations which has been followed by your organizations. So integrations and extendability. So what does it mean is like, let's imagine that you're creating an Airflow workflow, right? So within the workflow, you might have like multiple tasks which can be interacting with different third-party services within your data engineering ecosystems. So by default, your open source might not be supporting like different integrations. Let's imagine a case where your open source do not support your integration with Snowflake. Of course, by default, like most of the open source like provide the integrations with Snowflake and different platforms within data engineering ecosystem. But I'm just taking it for an example. So let's imagine a scenario where your open source versions do not support the integrations and extendabilities or any sort of plugins to your data Snowflake platform, but it is this can be taken as a considerations, and where the enterprise editions has worked on it and have created their integrations and which has been licensed. So this is one of the considerations which you can probably think of. Okay, I have repeated the integrations and extendability. I'll just remove this. Yes, sir. Okay, I'll just remove it in the later part since it's like collapsing the structure of the PPT. Yes, and performance and reliability. So let's imagine if you're like managing your open source version. So yeah, you are the one who is should be capable enough to scale up and scale down your systems depending on the volume of data which you are basically working. And also you are the one who is responsible to handle the reliability of the systems, because it's actually a open source versions which can be deployed on your systems, and you are the one who's going to manage it, right? In those cases, it can be like very tedious to handle such situations in a big organizations or in production environment. So that's when like this enterprise editions can be like more helpful. And also, let's imagine that these open source versions are being like released on the internet, but there are no documentations or no adoption documents which has been provided, or like not no any sort of like training being like provided to help you to onboard and understand this workflows, this particular tool. But when you're going ahead with the enterprise editions, it's the responsibility of the provider to help you with the better training and onboarding. And also like there can be like a lot of documentations which can be like added onto their websites by their own developers as well. So this can help you with a lot of different use cases. And that's why like people always opt for enterprise edition of any sort of tools to be used in their organizations. So yeah, that's it for today's session. So in this session, so I wanted to help you to understand what basically is orchestrations and how is it being used on the daily basis as a data engineer. And we also like explored around like typical use case scenarios of orchestration tools in a data engineering daily task. And then we discussed about that different data orchestration tools, and we spoke about like what's the difference between the open versions and enterprise editions. So in the playlist, of course, as I mentioned earlier, so we are going to like add a lot of videos onto it, and do stay tuned for that. And we are definitely going to bring in a lot of different use cases and more interesting concepts around Apache Airflow and this orchestration tools, right? And thanks a lot for staying connected with us, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you.